Hey guys, welcome to another Getting Personal. Today I wanted to discuss something called the resistance of the mind and pretty much what this entails, and I want to go over certain things and how you can, when you're sitting down and working and trying to do something or trying to believe in yourself or trying to accomplish anything, you have a lot of resistance and it's all in the mind. It's like that thing that stops you, and it's almost like you're stopping yourself and you're not allowing yourself all at the same time. So today I'm going to discuss this and I'm going to get into it. So let's get started. The resistance of the mind is pretty much something that you're trying to overcome. Your beliefs, your thing of sitting down and just focusing. And I want to discuss techniques and just certain mindset practices around that and what you could do. Perhaps you can put things in place. And for me anyway, these are certain things that I do. And it sounds funny, but when you have a lot of resistance, there's a lot of beliefs in yourself that you can't do this thing or it's too difficult. And you're simply, for me anyway, I've learned to break things down. I don't look at the big picture, I look at something small. So say when you have a smaller task, you could have, for example, you can have a bit of work that has so many complicated bits on it. There's so many, you go, well, maybe this design is made up of 1,000 objects plus some, right? And you're like, whoa, you don't look at that. You compartmentalize, you narrow in on one spot, and then you start to work on that and you bring it into a bigger picture. You do not take too much on. It will just overwhelm you. And then on top of that, you have to actually get rid of all the negative mindsets that you have, just even, I'd say, thoughts that you have behind everything that you're approaching, because you could go, wow, this is too much, or I can't solve this. And there's something that's, once you've practiced something enough, you don't realize that you can do more than you think and then level up as you're working. So you can only do so much more, but you don't know, basically when you're working, you're capable of achieving more than you think, but you aren't capable of achieving astronomically higher than you've practiced. So when it comes to doing things, you sat and you've practiced and you've done these things for years, you often have to then sit down and go, well, I want to sit down and do something big, a big deal thing. A lot of times that's so much resistance of the mind. And what I would say is that warm up to these things, do little bits, do this and do that. And then on top of it, have your really big projects and have your small projects. So then the resistance is a little bit lower, because when you have these little rewarding projects, you get to go, well, this week I'm going to release a bit of work and it's a small project. There's nothing really big that I have to then look at getting done constantly. Well, this has to be done, this has to be done, because you've got this little reward. And the thing is, you've actually, I don't know, it's not as if you've conned yourself, you've actually made a little reward for the smaller project to then be this thing like, oh, I've got this done, I feel good about this. And you've aimed to get it done too. You've not just said you're going to do a smaller project and then have your really big project on the side. Because what happens with getting resistance, and especially resistance of the mind, is that you have these really big projects and then you have smaller projects, right? Sometimes the smaller projects can actually be harder to actually finish. And so what you're doing is, in that instance, it's like you're getting that little quick repetition. You're going in, doing it. Say you've got 3 or 4 days to do it, and you get it done. It's like a rep in the gym. It's oftentimes when you look at the gym and it's like, well, that's a really heavy weight. Do I want to lift a really heavy weight? And sometimes with me, I'm like, yeah, I'll do it every now and again, but I don't want to do it all the time because it will burn me out. So then the lighter weights feel somewhat rewarding because I've conditioned myself to the heavier weights. But the thing is, I'm constantly mixing those two, keeping it fresh. And I think that's the way we have to approach our work, and because it's reflective of our mindset. And then there's a lot of resistance when we do approach work, and then the mindset practices of your your thoughts, and you doubting yourself, you can do this or that, or this was too much work. And believe it or not, you get a lot of flow between those parts where you're positively charged, and when you're negatively charged, all you see is the negatives. You might be like, well, this program's not going to work, it's going to crash, it's going slow. But the funny thing is, when you're working and you're doing stuff, sometimes, a lot of the times, you actually don't see how much time is actually passing, or the pain of doing something, how torturous it could be. And you're like, oh, I'm just doing all this busy work and all this stuff. But that is the work you enjoy the most, is like this little busy work, and it's like, that's it. I know when things crash, the quicker you accept something losing a bit of work or something crashing, the quicker you can move, right? If you get stuck and you dwell and just drop it, let it go. You're going to be less resistance within yourself, and then things come quicker, things flow quicker. A lot of times we are just resisting what we need to do through our thoughts, and it's that those beliefs, that kind of the negativity, that if you were, remember when you were a child, you were so positive about things and going to school and doing all this stuff, usually, right? And so you don't have much resistance. And these things, as we get older, we have resistance, and it's like the mindset that we get and adopt through just getting older, and just our beliefs around things is really bad. So we have to learn to, as we grow older, we need to learn to not be so resistant in ourselves. And oftentimes that we like to also distract ourselves so much from feeling what that resistance point is. If you just sat down and you did your work, you don't have any distractions, like you just have a to-do list, right? You have less resistance because there isn't anything around you to distract you, or to be this reward of dopamine that's more than say the work you're doing. You could say, well, browsing YouTube is easier. Well, it's going to give you that reward of dopamine than your work. But lo and behold, if you do the work, that will reward you, and it will snowball, right? YouTube's not going to snowball into anything. It's just like you consume it, you take it in, and you're done with it. So trying to get through resistance and your whole mindset resistance is there's a lot of little practices. And I know I kind of go off in little tangents, but I like to make these videos to discuss topics and go over what certain things are. And if you're sitting there and you have a lot of resistance, rethink your whole workstation. Go over it and go, well, do I have a to-do list? Do I have a timer? Am I rewarding myself at certain times after an hour or two? Am I doing things like this? And lo and behold, you will see things a little bit more clearly, because if there's resistance within you, oftentimes in life, there are other external things that are rewarding you. So it's making you resistant. You're like, I want to do that thing more so too. I want to just like click this and go. What you realize is like every little distraction, there's resistance behind the distractions, because you need to be so bored with work that you find it enjoyable. And oftentimes, it sounds like a contradiction, but to do the boring work is probably the most enjoyable thing you can, because what happens is you drop into a meditative state, and you just kind of like, I'm sure people have been there, and they're just going over their minds. Oftentimes, if you just sit there, you can have actually no music, no distractions, and you can sit there for an hour with just the humming of the computer, or just like whatever, the aircon, or just something in the background. You're just sitting there and you're going through it, and you're looking at the work, you're taking the work in. And if you're an incredibly distracted person, I'm incredibly easily distracted. And the thing is though, you develop a sense of hyperfocus. For me anyway, I know I develop hyperfocus. And believe it or not, that short little attention span that you do get, it's like this much, but then it equals this much work, because you're working in a rapid rate, because it's just so much hyper-focus and things flow. And believe it or not, if you can have that, use it. But you have to put so many things in place. You cannot have anything that will make you resist to sit down and do work. And oftentimes people, we are our own worst enemies. We are pretty much always in the self-doubt, and it's just like, clear the mind. You need to realize your emotions and what's happening inside, and doing all these mindset practices and knowing that, yes, I'm resistant to doing this thing, but make an excuse for yourself for one day, for 1 hour, for 1 month to do a thing and see what happens from that thing. Just do it. And you will be pleasantly surprised what starts to come from it, and it snowballs. It's because if you've always had a difficult time with doing and finishing projects, oftentimes I notice when people get stuck on projects, they're in a sense of a OCD mindset. And I know with a lot of my students, there's some people that can get stuck with projects and just not finish them. Oftentimes they're trying to level up within the one project, which is acceptable, but to a certain point, it's quicker just to finish it, and then maybe either you could drop it for a bit and move on, but you're your own resistance point. Your mindset is all the resistance that you could ever want with your whole life. And getting your certain mindset practices in place and being distraction free, going through things with a fine-tooth comb, because you're trying to optimize your life. Even go over your diet. Are you being distracted by going off and eating food? These things reward you more than work. And believe it or not, you're just thinking about food. If you're hungry when you sit down and you're working, or while you're working, you know what will happen? The hunger will pass and you'll forget about it. But a lot of people are acting on that hunger response and getting up and eating something. That's distraction, and then you have to come back and sit down and work. So you're just being resistant again, because you're just finding excuses to then find a reward that's greater than your work. And being really aware of your mindset is pushing through every little bit of resistance. There's plenty of times where I've sat and I'm hungry, and with me, I don't have anything in the house that, like, I'll go to the fridge, I'll open it, and I'm like, oh, there's nothing in there, and then it's just my prepped meals. If I ate my prepped meals, I would be hungry for later. So I've put so many things in place that I know, working from home, I would be like, yeah, I want to eat that food and do all this stuff. But look, you don't do it. Like, it's like having a pack of cigarettes right next to your computer. You're probably going to smoke them all to try and reward yourself for sitting down and working, right? Or to calm yourself from your thoughts and being resistant and all these things. And it's like, you need to get rid of it. Just allow yourself to get rid of things for a while. Do it for a month. And a lot of times it's like, disconnect your internet. Just get rid of your bloody phone. Like, there's so many things that you're being resistant. You're allowing that resistance. You're allowing it to happen. You need to be like, I'm in a cave and I've just got a computer with nothing else on it. Or you're with a pen and paper, and there's nothing else of a distraction. You have to realize that you are your own worst enemy when it comes to it. And if you know that you're like clicking and doing all these things and it's distraction, watch what you're doing. Guilt yourself. Hold yourself accountable. Don't let that. It's because you have so much resistance when you're doing stuff naturally, but some people have so much more because they're addictions to certain things. And especially in this modern day, we have so much stuff that will make us so distracted towards things. And you guys just have to be aware of that. Just make sure you're not doing these things to think you're like, well, I need to do this. I need to check my emails. I need to do that, blah, blah, blah. You actually don't. You'd probably like be fine not checking your emails for like 3 or 4 days and you'd be all right. No one would care. That's the whole point of emails. So like, you just practice trying not to do a thing. Do all like the social media checking, maybe straight up in the morning, do it, or in the afternoon, before bed, or like, just get away from certain things, from making you so resistant. And the more you do these things, the more you have a timer for your work, the more you sit and you watch all your movements. Am I eating this food to distract myself? Am I talking to this person to distract myself? And you have to question it. Maybe then you start allowing certain times of your day, yeah, I'll talk to this person because it's social. Don't be like, well, I'm talking to them just to simply distract myself. Do it because you will feel social, you have a social connection, you do all these things. Like, I'm not saying cut your whole life and do all these things, but be aware of every little thing. Everything that you do in your life will just be this thing that can catch you and absorb you into never getting anything done. Like, you could be the most focused person in the world if you allow yourself, and that's the problem. You're always on your own back when you're doing these things. You're your own worst enemy, and that's where that saying comes from. So I hope you guys get something out of this this chat. It's a little bit of rambling, but I thought I really want to try and reinforce things, and I know you guys do enjoy these things, so I'm trying to do them every day, trying to get something out. Whoever watches them, great. And thanks guys for supporting me. Until next time guys, take care.